Welcome, everybody, to Bless Our Workforce. My name is Steve Engel, and I'm a camp engagement and executive search consultant at JCC Association of North America. This session is being recorded, and we understand that some people don't wish to be recorded, in which case you may turn off your camera, although we encourage everyone who is comfortable doing so to stay visible so we can all feel that we're together. If this isn't the session you intended to join, please return to Spot Me and select a different session. We aspire for every person to feel they belong at ProCon, and we're really working hard to build inclusive spaces in which all people feel welcome, respected, safe, and fully included. To that end, we encourage you to consider the following suggestions as we begin our time together. We invite you to rename yourself in Zoom with your name, agency, and if you're comfortable, adding your preferred personal pronouns. We've enabled closed captioning, and you have the option to turn it off using a button at the bottom toolbar. And please reach out to me in chat if there's anything I can do to enhance your learning experience. We're absolutely thrilled to offer this multifaceted conference at no cost to our JCCs, made possible by the very generous donation of our ProCon 2021 sponsors. Each sponsor believes in the JCC movement and the incredible work all of you do, and it's possible, this conference is possible only because of them. Their representatives are proud to be with us, and we hope you show your appreciation for their support by visiting their booths in our virtual vendor hall. During the conference, you can also use the chat feature to connect with them, and after the conference, reach out using their contact information. And now, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker and author, a colleague and a friend of his new book, Bless This Workforce, Mark Young. This is a book that provides blessings or strategies based on the career narratives of 13 Jewish communal pros, supported by management theory and wisdom of Jewish tradition. Today's session will allow us to explore and identify how we can best motivate and value our JCC pros so they feel blessed at work. A full biography of Mark, who is the director of our J Response, JCC Association's signature initiative to train and deploy JCC pros from across the continent to communities in the aftermath of a crisis, is listed on SpotMe. At this time, I'm very proud to turn over the floor to Mark.
Wow. I'm just going to say first, I'm going to remove Steve from the spotlight. Thank you, Steve. Holy wow. I am so honored that you're spending the next hour in this session for a couple of reasons. One, we have so many great sessions happening right now, and each one is great. And the fact that you chose this one, I want to make sure that this hour counts for you. And second, I will say that this is kind of a dream come true. A, to work at JCC Association and to be part of this wonderful movement, and B, to be able to share with you something that's been a passion for mine for well over a decade, but certainly this book over the last 4 years has consumed a lot of my life outside of being with my work and with my family. So thank you. I'm so excited to be engaging with all of you, and there will be times for us to discuss together. I'm going to share my screen, and mostly, even though I'm spotlighted and you'll be seeing mostly a slideshow, I want you to know that this is meant to be interactive as well. So when we ask you to put stuff in the chat, put stuff in the chat. If you want to unmute, and we will have a wonderful conversation. This is Bless Our Workforce, and this is my desired outcome. For those of you that may know me, I have an educator background. I hope by the end of this hour, we're able to explore and identify together how we can ensure us, our professionals, those that we work with and work for us, feel valued, motivated, and blessed at work here at ProCon right now, right today. So I actually want to start with a question to all of you. I want you to think, I'm not sure if we're going to have time for preparing and sharing. I think we're going to just do it in the chat. I want you to take a moment and think. Who is a mentor or a supervisor or a teacher or other figure that has inspired you and helped you on your journey? Just take a moment and just think about, there may have been many, but think of one that has really inspired you or helped you on your journey. I also want you to think about, as you about to chat in your response, what did they do to inspire or support you? So take a moment, put it in chat. There's 114 of us, so I hope to see at least a few chats. Who is somebody, you can say their name, or you can just say who they were, like who they were in relation to you. Who is someone that's helped you on your journey? Say who they were, and maybe you can say one or two, like a phrase about how they helped you, and I'll try to read them out as well. A fellow executive director, amazing. My first boss, she let me make mistakes. Oh, what a great boss. They let me fail from time to time and learn it the hard way. Managing director of my former organization. Previous boss who taught me the value of being more than fair. My old general manager at a previous job. My father. She helped me be honest myself. My high school mentor, previous jam. I encourage you to take a moment as you're listening to go through this chat and to think about all the people that everyone on this conversation has inspired us. And I want to connect this to Bless Our Workforce immediately. As you think about the people that have inspired you, I wonder, how might our staff answer this question? How might the people that report to us, or that we report to, or that work with us that are not on this call, what if we asked them over coffee, virtually, or in person, maybe safely, or in a meeting, or in some other gathering? How might they answer the question, who's inspired them? This is why I'm opening with this icebreaker of sorts. The first step, I hope you get a lot out of this hour, but if you get nothing else out of this hour, the first thing I want you to get is, if we get to know each other deeply, if we really take time to get to know the people that we're working with and for, that is actually the first step to blessing our workforce. And that's something that I have learned time and time again, especially through this project. But it's not just asking, how are you, how's the weather? Ask a deep question that allows us to understand people's journeys and what inspires them, because that is actually a window into what motivates them. If I look through the chat and I saw a little bit more about what you said and really thought about it, I can start to say, hey, they were motivated because that person allowed me to make mistakes. So perhaps I'm motivated, or that person is motivated because I was in a scenario where I felt comfortable taking risks. Well, that's good information for me if that person is now reporting to me. These are really great questions to ask in order to start blessing our workforce. And something that I found in the 13 people that I interviewed, and I'll say more about that in a minute, is that having a mentor or guide or someone who believed in their potential or passion, who guided and inspired them, that was resonant in all the people that I spoke with. And is resonant in this book as well. So I'll mention this at the end of the session, but if we want to bless our workforce, ensuring everyone that is around us has an opportunity to have a mentor or a guide, someone to support them, someone to be on their side, rooting for them, is one way that we can bless our workforce for sure. So I want to introduce myself. Thank you so much, Steve, for introducing me, but I want to introduce myself by actually answering the question that I asked all of you. Yes, my day job is director at JResponse at JCC Association, where we train and deploy professionals to respond to crisis, both during and afterwards. We have some JResponders on this call. Thank you, JResponders. I almost wore my t-shirt today, but I decided not to. But I actually want to share with you about my family. I'm asking you to share a bit about yourself. I want you to know a little bit about me. I'm married to a wonderful person and wife of mine, Rabbi Mary Young, as a rabbi here in Westchester County. That's my daughter, Noah, who's in second grade. My son, Asher, who is graduating from JCC preschool, Shames JCC in Tarrytown, in a couple of months. And we just adopted a dog, Lucky, who is not pictured here because I wanted to show that picture. And we live in Hartsdale, New York. These are the people that have inspired me. My mom who passed away about 7 years ago, she taught me that kindness towards others and to oneself reaps endless benefits. Her maiden name was actually Kind. Sue Gelsey, who many of you know is the Chief Program Officer at JCC Association. She's not paying me to say this, but she is easily the best boss that I've ever had because she's attentive to my needs, challenging me with interesting, hard projects, and giving me autonomy and the resources I need to thrive. And a good friend of mine who actually I read about in the book, her name is Corrine Wachowski. She is the CEO of Tribal Gatherings. She started a whole company on Jewish summer camp experiences for adults. She was told no so many times in her pursuit, and she had this relentless, innovative pursuit, and she got to yes after so many no's, and that really inspired me. I'm sharing this all with you because if I were working for you, you might want to know this because that would be good data to have in order to best manage me so I feel motivated and valued. So again, thinking about how we're all inspired is good data to have, and then you get a little sense about me too. And I wrote this book called Bless Our Workforce, which is a project that actually started when I was working at the Jewish Theological Seminary. I went to my dean at the time. I was running a leadership center, and I was actually partnering with JCC Association on Jelly and JCC LTI, these leadership programs. And I said, I want to take 10% of my time like they do in Google and do a passion project that's related to my work. I want to interview people because we have all these great surveys like the Leading Places to Work surveys from Leading Edge, and we heard from Gali Cooks yesterday, that give us kind of global data on how our workforce is in the Jewish community. But what's wonderful about Judaism is that we didn't take a survey of the 600,000 Israelites that were going from Egypt to the land of milk and honey, to Israel, to Canaan. We hear about the story of Moses and Aaron and Joshua and Miriam and all of the biblical characters, and we learn from them. So what if we can learn from the people, the individual people that make up the Jewish professional community? So that was the seed, and 4 years later, with the support of both my former employer and JCC Association, and working in the Wexner Field Fellowship, was able to bring Bless Our Workforce, this book, to life. What's the main thesis, and how is it going to be relevant for our discussion, where I'm actually going to highlight a few of the blessings for you to take with you? If we deeply get to know our people, we can learn how to best motivate and inspire them so each feels blessed at work. I said that already. I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say it again because I think it's that important. Bless Our Workforce believes each of us has the ability to ensure Jewish life is the best place to work. We are not a perfect place to work. No industry is, but we have the capacity and potential to be great. And sometimes it feels out of our control. I want to suggest that we all have some level of autonomy and control to make this place a great place to work, make JCCs a great place to work, influencing and managing in our organizations. Where can we be the wizards? And I'll say more about that in a second. And we must align our intentions, what I would say in Hebrew, kavanah, with our actions, or what I would say in Hebrew, arkeva, for our talent to reach their full potential. You're all in this room, and I think you are all JCC professionals, because we want everyone to love working at a JCC, right? That should be our intention. But how can we look at our actions and make sure they actually align? And that's where I hope this tool, Bless Our Workforce, can help us making sure that we align our actions with our intentions with everyone that we engage with professionally at our JCCs. So there's individual narratives, there's management theory, and then there's also Jewish tradition. I think the oldest management text is actually the Bible. And I'm very connected to the prayer Mat Tovu, which is actually in the portion of Balak in Numbers. It was my bar mitzvah portion, and so it stuck with me all of these years. In Hebrew, it's Mat Tovu Ohaleha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. That translates to how goodly are your tents, O Jacobs, your houses of Israel. 30 seconds about this story. It's the king of the Amalekites, Balak, sends a wizard named Balaam to go curse the Israelites as the Israelites are traveling from bondage to freedom. And the Balaam encounters a talking donkey, which is actually sent by God. And through that connection, or through that altercation, he ends up changing his mind and shifting his paradigm and blesses with this prayer the Israelites instead. So I'm thinking, we want to bless our workforce in our JCCs. What if we went in with our intentions and said, how goodly is our talent in our organizations, our workforce in this Jewish community, in our JCCs, and put actions to those words. Bless Our Workforce is how we can do that. And throughout this session, I'm going to get into more specifics and have a conversation with you on that. But I want to stress again that there's some things that might feel out of our control, but there's some things that we can say, hey, we're the wizards. We have the power to bless our workforce, if not the entire JCC all at once, but for one person or for one department or for one set of communities. And I bet you there's so many things everyone on this call is already doing to bless our workforce, and I'm hoping this hour will help us amplify those, and then think about ways that we can also adjust as well. So we have the spell book. I don't believe in magic, but I kind of believe in magic in this way, and hopefully this tool can help us perform some wizardry of sorts. So I don't want to talk so much about the book. I want to talk about the work and the content of it. It's based on 13 Jewish community professionals and what motivates each of them. They're roughly in the age cohort that I'm in, like 30s, 40s, just because I was interested. I had to kind of choose a cohort, but I think it's otherwise very diverse. We have people of color, we have executives, non-executives, people of all genders, people that work in different Jewish organizations, a couple from JCCs, but also Hillel and federations and others. So I tried to make it as diverse as possible. I'm sure I could have made it more diverse. But I think no matter who I was speaking with, they had a lesson that was true for all of us. Again, I wanted to connect these individual narratives, supporting by management theory and also the wisdom of our Jewish tradition. How we manage our staff is a very, and how we do it well, I think is a very Jewish thing, regardless of our faith, right? We are a very pluralistic community in JCC, people of all faiths or no faiths, but we are connected to Jewish tradition. And I think we need to harness that in the way that we bless and manage and value our staff. So these are all titles of the blessings. Each blessing represents a chapter, and you can see them right here. Challenge our talent, build around the talent, foster the relationships, feed the creative drive, show them the fruits of their labor, promote collaboration and end exclusion, cut the BS, which is like cutting the lack of transparency and have more efficiencies and have it more open in our organizations, empower our professionals to see the big picture, bring their whole integrated selves to work. How do we connect people to what they care about personally to their work professionally, which has created a whole other dynamic during the last 14 months of this pandemic. It's not about them. How do we actually motivate professionals by engaging in their humility, their anava in Hebrew, and then also make it all about them? How can we ensure that we are recognizing our staff in ways that actually are meaningful to them? And then championing the relentless pursuit for those that have an entrepreneurial spirit like Corrine. I'm not going to talk about all of these blessings. Obviously, would be more than honored if you got the book, but I'm going to focus on a couple of them. And actually, depending on how much we have in conversation, I may just talk about one of them, or I may talk about a few of them, depending on how the hour goes. I want us to drive it together, this wonderful group. So I'm going to introduce a blessing. This is what I'd like to do, because I'd like to have this be interactive. And I encourage you, as I'm speaking about a blessing, kind of a cliff notes of a chapter, I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes on it. And as you're doing that, as you're listening to me doing that, I want you to think about 4 questions. For those of you who have been to a Passover Seder, it's kind of a Jewish thing to have 4 questions and the number 4. These are the 4 questions, and I'm actually going to ask Steve to put them in the chat so you have them available there too. As you think about this blessing, do you have an example from your JCC in which this blessing is being applied? How does this blessing resonate with your own motivations? What questions arise? And also, what may get in the way of implementing this blessing? I'm going to ask you after I show this first blessing to feel free to either in chat, or you can also raise your hand and unmute yourself. Would love to have other people speaking, and I may even unspotlight myself so we can see that person speaking when they're saying something. To respond to any one of these questions, because I'd love to get some thoughts and feedback for the group. I actually wanted to start with someone, I don't know if this is easier or not easier, but this one felt very JCC, even though the individual that I interviewed actually has worked in federations all his life, the Jewish Federation system. And I'm actually share a bit about the story of Ezra Shankin. Ezra Shankin is currently the CEO, and again, I spoke with execs and non-execs, people from across the organizational chart. He happens to be an executive of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. Hello to everybody, if anyone's there from the Vancouver JCC or even from just Canada north of the border. Love Canada. Foster the relationships. he was talking about how he loves going to work every day because of the people that he gets to be with. He just, regardless of whether he was, an associate or a manager, a director, a fundraiser, a programmer, an executive, he just loved being in relation with other people. That was getting him so excited every day. So I wanted to probe that a little bit, and I wanted to suggest a schematic. And in most of the, almost every single blessing or chapter in this book, I present a schematic, kind of a how to apply this blessing in your work as a manager, director, fellow professional. And for Ezra, and when I say Ezra, it could be for many of us, maybe not all of us, not every blessing is going to resonate with every professional, but I'm going to argue that most of the blessings resonate with most, is if people feel like they're part of a strong and caring community, and that translates to a sense of family or cohort and support. For Ezra, that's the fellow Federation people in his organization. It's actually the other Jewish community professionals, the exec at the JCC in Vancouver, the Federation folks that he knows across the continent. There's a sense of family or cohort and support, something he's felt since he was a little kid when he was raised essentially by Jewish community professionals. That translates to exceptional personal satisfaction for him. And I was really inspired by that, and I wanted to go deeper, and I was like, what's Jewish about that from a management perspective? So for those that pray regularly or irregularly within the Jewish faith, you may know that the rabbis, and when I talk about the rabbis, I talk about the rabbis of the Talmud, the oral law from thousands of years ago that the broader Jewish community very much studies and follows. They require us in many instances to pray in a minyan. And a minyan is Hebrew for a minimum of group of 10 worshipers. In Orthodox circles, it's often 10 males. It could be 10 people. People interpret it differently, but let's just say 10 worshipers. Our relationships with each other, an obligation or not, foster a deep sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves, which fuels us and our work deeply. There's a reason why we pray in a group. There's a reason why we pray in a group, especially when someone's going through a difficult time, like loss of a parent or anybody, or even when we're just saying certain prayers. We're meant, according to Jewish tradition, to be in a community. So I say that from a management perspective, it's like, we need to be in relationships, and we need to make sure our staff are in relationships with each other, with their work, with partnerships outside the JCC to fuel their motivations. I also cite Dr. Ron Wolfson talks about relational Judaism, that people are coming to synagogues and coming to JCCs, not necessarily to worship or even to work out. They come to the JCCs because they want community, right? That's what we're in the business of. So I'm going to argue JCC professionals and Jewish community professionals are motivated because they want to be in community. So how do we foster that in the way that, in this example, Ezra was fostered? So this is how I break it down in the chapter, and breaking it down even just in conversation with Ezra. Allow staff to engage in relational work. Make sure their work is not in isolation. Now, again, you may have a staff person that wants to work in isolation, and that's okay. But I'm going to argue that many, if not most of our JCC professionals want to make sure that they are not isolated and that they are doing work, relational work that requires personal interaction, debate, decision, and policymaking. Assign meaningful work that requires talent to connect to others. And this connects throughout a lot of these blessings. What I'm saying is, blessing 3, but these blessings naturally overlap. Make sure that the work that they do is meaningful to them. This is not to say that you can't assign work that they have to do even if they don't love it, right? There's, especially over the last year, there's work that every JCC professional has had to do that hasn't maybe been in their job description. But what I am saying is that if we find ways to make sure that our professionals are doing work that is meaningful to them, or most of the work or some of the work is meaningful to them, and it requires talent to connect to others, that's a motivator as well. And then providing opportunities for employees to be spiritually nourished through relationships. We talk about fitness as mental fitness and physical fitness, but there's also spiritual fitness. And if we allow people to be in relationships, they will be spiritually nourished as well and motivated. And this all connects to creating a culture of empathy, that if we generally care about each other and genuine interest in learning and caring about each other, that is also a motivator as well. So this is one blessing. It's probably the least controversial of the blessings. I'm not sure if any of my blessings are controversial, but I think it was one that I wanted to bring here first because I think it's something that we are able to turnkey, which means we're able to make happen or able to amplify what we're already doing well. So obviously went through that kind of quick. I want to know, and put in the chat, I'm actually going to make sure that I de-spotlight myself so you can still see me. But if you speak, then we'll see you. Any example from your JCC in which this blessing is being applied? Did these blessings resonate with your own motivations? What questions arise? And what might get in the way? We have 128 people in this room, which is amazing. So I'd love to, maybe get 1 or 2 comments and then either continue on this conversation or move on. So here's the risk I'm going to take. I'm going to ask for a response. Well, I don't want crickets. I'd love to have 1 response or 2. Feel free to put it in the chat as well.
I'm willing, Mark, to just unmute myself.
Go for it, Jackie.
So the question that really stuck out to me that I kind of wanted to speak on for just a second is how does the blessing resonate with our own motivations? Without taking up too much time, I came from the JCC world. Mark and I actually know each other from Campwise, our JCC sleepover camp many, many years ago. I didn't realize when I was growing up that what I really loved about Jewish camp was belonging somewhere and to something. I didn't always have that feeling outside of Jewish camp life. And I didn't realize how important it was. I kind of left the Jewish world for a bit, went to Israel on birthright, and had this aha moment of sort of that reminder of community, connection, belonging. That meant something to me. It was suggested that I apply at the JCC. And the reason why I even wanted to speak on it for a second is this resonated so deeply with me. I've been at the JCC now for almost 11 years. I never intended to stay. I actually sort of had that sort of attitude of, I'm not really sure this is going to be right for me. I came from the inner city in Akron, Ohio, where I was teaching previous to being here, and felt like 2 totally different worlds, that I wouldn't feel connected here. I couldn't have been more wrong. The JCC here, and really our leadership within the early childhood department, which is, I'm an early childhood teacher, really has committed themselves to that family, that community, that connection. I always say that as an early childhood educator, there's a lot more value than necessarily comes in a paycheck. And that community piece has kept me here for 11 years. That family, that belonging, that value, that blessing has kept me here and forever, likely.
Jackie, thank you so much for sharing that. That definitely speaks to relationships. It also speaks to actually a session that's happening tomorrow on how we create a culture of belonging at JCCs. And it speaks to so much. Jackie, thank you. I'm going to read a little bit in the chat too. It's a small thing, but our name tags of the J logo and just employee's name eliminates titles and hierarchy, and that can create relationships too. Excellent. There's a question. Having reduced staff during COVID times makes it more difficult to provide relational work. You're absolutely right. And how might we figure out ways to do that in a virtual space? I could probably do a whole other hour on that discussion. But how do we challenge ourselves, maybe create collaborative teams, et cetera? And knowing that we're also going to probably be transitioning forward to some kind of hybrid or maybe back to full-time as well. But great. I want to invite either 1 more comment on this blessing. And I think we're going to have time for at least 1 more. And after the blessings, I have some more stuff up my sleeve too. So I'll open it up for a few seconds. And if I don't hear someone chime in, I will go to the next blessing.
I'll talk. Kent from Mandale JCC in Beechwood, Ohio. I liked your comment about knowing your people. So my background is 20 years United States Navy and then the corporate world. I've been here at the JCC for 6 months, and I'll classify myself as recovering Irish Catholic. So I've tried to really embrace everything that I'm learning here. And it's pretty amazing because this does not exist in corporate America on a lot of levels. It darn sure doesn't exist in the United States military. I guarantee you that. We call it intrusive leadership, but I have found that you absolutely cannot lead people without knowing what motivates, what drives, what their wants, their needs, their desires are, because that's how you create a relationship, and ultimately you gain trust and respect. And at the end of the day, those people, call them what you will will go above and beyond to be supportive of whatever the mission is, whatever the assignment is, whatever that extracurricular assignment is.
Ken, I want to pick up on, first of all, thank you for sharing. And also thank you to Jackie for sharing if I didn't say thank you before. Kent, you just said something very powerful. If the people that, if I'm working for somebody and they show care in who I am as a person, I am super motivated to do a good job for them, or super motivated to do a good job for the organization because they're taking the time to get to know me and building a relationship with me. Again, that might not resonate for everyone, but it might resonate with a lot of people. So Kent, thank you for sharing that. And I think the reason why I wanted to lead with relationships is because I think this either can be or is happening in a lot of JCCs already. So how can we amplify this to strengthen the motivations of our staff? And in what ways, if it's not happening or not happening the right way, can we adjust as well? Again, I don't think this is easy, but I think it's accessible, this relationship motivator. Allow me to go on to the next blessing. If you had more questions or responses, I will promise to try to get to them. This was actually, I'm not going in order of the book. This is actually blessing 6. This is promote collaboration and end exclusion. It's kind of like this next extension from relationships. And in this one, I interviewed Eliza Klein. Eliza Klein, this happens to be an exec as well. If I get to the third blessing, it's not an exec. She is the CEO of One Table. If you're unfamiliar, One Table is the fabulous organization that's popped up in the last decade that is gathering, allowing folks primarily, but not exclusively, of the 20s, 30s generation to host Shabbat dinners as a way of building community. And she has been motivated, whether she worked in community organizations or at One Table or at federations, and even when she was in Hillel in college rather, of not only promoting collaboration, but making sure that everyone feels part of an in-group, and therefore not part of an out-group. Kind of like the opposite, like if you're creating a clique, then everyone's in the clique, everyone's in the group. That's what really motivates her. And through our conversation, we created the inclusion schematic. Now, we have an inclusion statement at the JCC, for JCC Association North America, and the JCC movement, which is fantastic. Pro-Con, we're trying our darndest to make sure everyone feels included and that they belong. Inclusion could also mean about specifically working with people with certain, various abilities. In this case, it's really about making sure everyone just feels included. People are motivated, people like Eliza are motivated because if we promote a group identity through cultivating shared values and in-group shared experiences, that we're all part of something, we're all experiencing it the same or similar way, and that we have things that create a group identity, it cultivates, and this is maybe something that Jackie spoke about just now too, cultivates a feeling of belonging among this in-group. And that there's higher satisfaction and desire to work harder for the group. I want to work for the JCC because I really feel a part of the JCC. It's not just that I have great relationships here, but I feel part of the team. Right? Maybe I'm actually wearing the gear and the t-shirt, but I feel part of the team. And when someone else is being celebrated for work, I am excited because they're on my team and I'm really excited for them as well. So, I spoke about some Jewish tradition as wisdom background in the last blessing. In this one, I'm bringing in some management theory. Professor Don Taylor of McGill University, actually I got to study with him when I went to McGill in Montreal, teaches that as we feel more part of an in-group, and begin to identify more closely with this particular group, we can feel increasingly motivated and see this in-group become successful. And the key is to create an in-group without creating an out-group, right? We don't want to create a competitor. It's a different part of social identity theory, right? We're not competing. We are just creating in-group to strengthen motivation. So how do we do that? Through my conversation with Eliza and also through the other research, and again, more of this is in the book, we want to hire talent and retain talent who desire to collaborate and include others. It's one of the skills or one of the traits of what Mort Mandel, who is, may his memory be for a blessing, huge supporter of JCCs. He wrote the book, It's All About Who, about talent. He says, hire those A's. Right? And have those A's that want to collaborate, that have firepower, that include others. And obviously there's people on your team now. We want to hope that all of them are great and have the potential to be A's. But as we think about hiring in the future, who are those people that are going to come on that bus and want to collaborate and want to celebrate others and want to make sure that everyone feels included? How do we think about that as part of our hiring process? How do we make collective success transparent? In meetings, in email conversations. JCCs, some JCCs have 30, 40 different business units? How do we make sure that we're sharing amongst each other, that we're all one team, which is not easy to do when we're all doing different things, that we raise up everyone's good work and mark moments so all know and celebrate the accomplishment, creating a culture where I'm so excited that wellness, that person in wellness achieved that, while I work in Jewish life or in camp, what have you, and make those transparent so we can all see it and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be recognized and experience success as well in the group. Creating a culture of showing up. Making sure that we're providing forums, real or virtual, for everyone to speak openly, share, have input, and thus feel recognized. Are we creating those spaces where anybody, regardless of title, regardless of position, regardless of background, regardless of their institutional memory, can stand up, say hineni, but in kind of the Hebrew term, and say, I have a thought. Right? And that thought could be about something about the department, about the position, or even about the organization. There's another blessing that I write called empower people to see the big picture, that allow a lot of people in your organization to contribute to the conversations about the big ideas and the direction of the JCC, not just from where they sit, not just because of where they sit. So create a culture of showing up. And then part of that is also fostering an abundance mindset, that we honor everyone's ideas and build on them to make sure that everybody wins, right? If that person's idea was taken or that person was recognized, it's not taking away from somebody else. It's not diminishing the pie, but that there is room for everyone to feel in. There's room for everyone to contribute. There's room for everyone to feel recognized. There is no finite resource. And I know it feels that sometimes we have finite resource in terms of finances, but how do we invest in our professionals to make sure that there's abundance and an enlargement of the pie? I'll talk more about that before we end. And to that, especially if we're in positions of leadership, and that's not just the executive or the C-suite, it's anyone that is in a position of authority leadership. I think we all can act in ways of leadership, is to practice Tzimtzum, the Jewish traditional idea that sometimes I think we may have to pull back to allow other staff to shine and feel heard. If we're always running that meeting, if we are always leading the conversation, if we're always talking, and I say this because I have to check myself on this too, are we not allowing other voices to come up so everyone actually feels in? That's the second blessing I wanted to share with you, and I want to open it up for a little more conversation. Do you have an example from your JCC in which this blessing is being applied? How does this blessing resonate with your own motivations? What questions arise, and what may get in the way of implementing this blessing? I'm going to be vulnerable again and see if we can get one or two comments based on this blessing. Feel free to unmute or raise your hand. Oh,
I believe I might have an example if it's helpful.
Michael, thank you. Michael, where are you from?
I'm currently in Scottsdale, Arizona, preschool teacher, or in the classroom here.
Awesome. Hope all is well in Scottsdale.
Oh, it's very groovy. Thank you. One of the things that it got me thinking about was when we decided that our center really needed this like form of a leadership team. And so the conversations that were happening about who would be on them, what the expectations would be, how information would be relayed. And when we presented that to the staff, we had a lot more people interested. And so rather than say, okay, well, like, we're gonna pick our favorites or pick the most qualified or whatever that process was, we decided, okay, well, we'll have the leadership team, and then we'll also have people who can still come together from the staff to have a group conversation and get their thoughts together. So it evolved into like these little, in a Zoom session, like these little breakout groups that would come together and report to those that were going to be attending the leadership team. So it kind of took their power from the leadership team and gave it back to the staff so that the voices could all be heard. And our hope was that it would kind of grow that collective input and grow the data collection so that more people could have interest, but also be seeing their work come to fruition, if that makes sense.
Michael, that is an amazing example. And again, all of these blessings kind of overlap, at least in my head, and I think in the book too. There's this other principle that I write elsewhere in the book from Curtis Ogden. It's part of servant leadership about giving first. How do we give to our staff in order for us to receive more from them? So it sounds like part of that group going to different groups and getting input is giving staff power, input, authority, feedback to contribute to these larger conversations as a way of not only contributing, but adding to their motivations as well. So I hear like a giving first going on there, and I think that's really terrific. And by the way, you have a lovely JCC. I was there a few years ago, and I hope to get back to Arizona at some point. One more comment on this one, maybe, and I think we might have time for the third blessing too, which might be a little bit more, a little bit more, I don't know, controversial, but it's a little intense. One more comment, perhaps, and I'll also look in the chat. So I see a chat here that I think this is related to this blessing, and thank you, Corrine, for putting that the first executive director that you worked with, you were able to listen to the information, pick out what was important, implement policies, and bring to resolve conflicts, and learned a lot from her as an impressionable young individual. That's great as a mentor, and I think that also speaks to collaboration a little bit as well. Thank you so much, Corrine. And there's some other really great conversations happening in the chat that I encourage you to take a look at as we continue. This is really, really, really wonderful. And if you really want to speak, just unmute yourself as I continue, and I will definitely pause. I want to get to this third blessing, though, because it actually has a JCC connection. And I think you guys hopefully are enjoying hearing some of these blessings. This blessing is called Build Around the Talent. And I spoke to Allison Baisley, who's actually a really good friend of mine. She is currently an assistant camp director in the Northeast. She was actually working in a synagogue when I interviewed her initially back in 2017. And she was motivated, and she's still in this field, because when she was at a synagogue and wanted to go to graduate school, she was in a job that wasn't going to allow her to go to graduate school because of the hours and because of the commitment. And the rabbi or the executive director, I think both of them, went to Allison and said, hey, we want to keep you. You're a great youth and teen director, and we want you to go to school. How can we build the job around you so you stay? And she was able to figure out her classwork, and she was able to say, well, I want to work these times at these hours with these goals. And they're like, Allison, you're great. We want to keep you for as long as we can. We'll build the job around you. And because of that, she stayed for a long while. She stayed in the Jewish community professional field, got her graduate degree, and has been able to rise up. And I was like, that's fascinating. What does that mean? It reminded me, actually, of a lesson that I learned when I was at JCC summer camp, as Jackie referred to, at Camp Wise in Cleveland, Ohio. Hello to Cleveland, Chardon specifically. And it was a lesson that Jody Sperling, who was the director for many years, worked at JCC Association, has been a mentor of mine, that taught me, and I call it the success schematic, and I use the camp version of it. It's happy staff, happy camper, happy camp. And it came from when she was able to build physical improvements to camp through grants. And she decided to build a staff lounge first. And she said, if I don't have staff that feel like they're coming first, then they're not going to be happy, and then the campers are not going to be happy, and they're not going to be a happy camp. So before she remade the dining hall or built new cabins and new tennis courts, we built the staff lounge. And she said, happy staff, happy camper, happy camp. Now, what does this mean for us in building around a talent? It means, a bit of more true Jewish tradition coming in. Maimonides, who is the multifaceted scholar of about 1,000 years ago, also known as the Rambam, he has this level of charitable giving. And the highest level of charitable giving, beyond giving anonymously, beyond giving willingly or unwillingly, is to give a gift, a loan, or enter into a partnership or investment that will result in the recipient becoming self-sufficient instead of living upon others, and then will give more to that person or in this case, that organization. If we invest in our talent and put them first, they will actually be stronger for our organization, more motivated, we can hold them more accountable, and then our members, our patrons, our campers, our constituents will be more excited, come to our JCCs more, expand that pie, which I say might be controversial because it might be hard. If we're spending more on staff or more investment on staff, does that mean we're spending less otherwise? I'm here to suggest, and I want to give honor to everyone who has just been so wonderful leading our JCC movement and our execs on this call, and all the wonderful leadership that you do. I'm here to suggest that maybe we do this and we don't realize it, or maybe there's ways to do it more that will increase the motivations of our staff, increase the productivity and revenue and meeting of the mission or organization, and have a happy camp, have a happy JCC. So how do we do this? And how did this work for Allison? That we give strong content, ensure that the staff's work portfolio fits their interests. Again, it doesn't have to be their entire work portfolio. Folks might be loving early childhood and have had to still take temperatures. But as much as we can, how do we make sure the content is strong for that person, especially if they're a stellar superstar and we don't want to lose them? How do we ensure flexibility? I think we've learned a lot over the last year of how we need to ensure flexibility, or how to at least try for flexibility. That we focus on the work that needs to get done, that also works for the staff person. How might that work in a position where you don't, you have flexibility and can work from different places, and how also it might work for a person that, has to be at the desk as people are coming in for wellness. There's ways for flexibility in all areas. Clarity, ensure that the job goals and expectations are clear for the staff and that they are mutually agreed upon by the staff and the supervisor. This is really taking a hard look at job descriptions. We were talking about this in the HR peer community, to make sure that the job description actually fits the job and that it's written or it's agreed to in partnership with the person that's the employee and the supervisor. And this is maybe an opportunity, an inflection point as we're going back into or forward into kind of a hybrid or in-person, whatever workplace it looks like post-pandemic, to do that work too. Relationships, this blessing actually comes before the relationships in the book, but ensure that the talent is able to connect with others they gravitate to. And what I call matterness, that not just the content, but ensuring the work and the goal of the work matters to the employee, and that they find personal passion and satisfaction in the work that they do, and that what they care about matters. If you'll forgive me, I'm not going to invite comments to this blessing quite yet, because I want to add a little more, and then I'll invite a little bit of Q&A before we end. So hold on to those comments or questions if you do. I want to suggest a couple of more things, because I think this really feeds into this virtuous cycle. Part of the reason I wrote this book is because I was so inspired by the work of Zenyap Tan, Professor Zenyap Tan of MIT. She studied the retail industry and really showed the difference between like the Costco's and the Walmarts, at least at the time that she was studying. She found that the organizations that really invested in their staff, that did the best, whether it was compensation, which I know is a difficult thing, especially now, and really focusing on staff investment as much as they can, really training the staff, they were able to have better quality of labor and delivering excellence, and a better experience then for their shoppers or their members or their patrons. It leads to stronger and more efficient operational execution, and that allows us to grow the pie. How do we invest in our staff to grow and expand the pie and make sure they're motivated and valued, not feel like it's choosing one over the other? So I want us to think about that as we think about these blessings, each of these blessings, and saying if we bless our workforce, that's going to potentially not only solve some of the problems that we have, but will enhance our organization 10 times fold, and really will be, for JCCs, an amazing, wonderful, wonderful place to work. So I want to open it up for a second, but I want to say that in all of the 13 people that I spoke with, there were 4 themes that pretty much everyone was motivated by. And I want to suggest that if you take a couple other things away from this, is that maybe you focus on these 4 things, that people are inspired and supported by helping if they have a mentor or guide in a meaningful way. And some of that happens organically, but how can we engage with our staff and say, hey, is there maybe someone in the JCC or someone that you met at ProCon that you can talk to more? Maybe it was your trusted advisor. Maybe it was someone that you met in your peer community that you can engage in a mentoring relationship with, that does such a wonder of good in motivating our staff. We got this already in the Jewish community and the JCCs. Our missions are amazing, and people are motivated by the missions of our JCCs and our purpose of our work. So how do we amplify and make that explicit? How do we talk about our mission all the time and make sure the mission connects to everyone's jobs? That's a way to motivate our staff and to make them feel valued. Malleability. How do we provide flexibility in their work schedule and style as much as we can? And how do we think about that thoughtfully in partnership with our staff as we look to the next phases and beyond of COVID and beyond COVID? And then Shema, perhaps the prayer you can argue is the most well-known prayer in Jewish tradition. We say it, Jews say it in the beginning, at the end of their days. They say it throughout the 3 services of the day, the 3 times to pray in the day. We're motivated when we feel listened to. Shema means listen, means hear. How do we make sure that everyone that, again, we works for us, everyone in our JCCs, feels heard, even if we can't do the things, even if we can't give them that raise, even if we, right now, even if we, can't change all of their jobs right now, even if we have to ask more of them that they really need, even if we can't apply all of these blessings all the time with them, how do we just listen to them? Folks feel motivated when they know they're generally listened to, and that we try to at least adhere to what they're saying, and that the conversation is regular. It's not just a one-time conversation as well. So we have about 10 minutes, which is perfect. I want to open it up for about, I don't know, 5 or 7 minutes of conversation, but also as a way of action planning. What's one thing, as opposed to based on being on this conversation, being in this hour, and I'm so honored that you're all here, that you'll commit to? It could be, who will you schedule a deep conversation with? Who will you ask about their career journey? Who has inspired them? What they feel motivates them? What makes them feel valued? This presentation, by the way, will be available, so you can get this all when you need it. Because that'll be a window into what motivates them. You'll find out the big idea on how to motivate them and perhaps other JCC professionals as well. Who might you share these ideas with? Ideas in this hour, if you have an opportunity to review the book as well. And how might you also consider this philosophy elsewhere in our JCCs, not just your department or not just your area? This is the insight. Investing in staff motivations and value. Again, it doesn't take away from other resources, doesn't have to take away from other resources at our JCC. It's core to our growth. We are committed to our talent town strategy. That's why we have Procon, revenue and resources and meeting of our JCC missions. So let me go back to this action planning slide. I want to open it up for Q&A, comments. We have about 5 or 6 minutes before closing announcements. So I'll read a little bit from the chat. We've been a part of bringing people in together with their ideas and make that program and training stronger, excellent. One JCC will be doing interdepartmental dating to get to know each other as department heads and individuals over a virtual lunch or happy hour. That's such a great idea. Other questions or thoughts, reflections, being vulnerable and opening it up so we can maybe hear from a couple of people.
Mark, it's Marty English. I'm going to jump in here.
Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. So I think what you're saying, and I must, it resonates with me a lot, is building a culture in the organization of communication, and communication is key. And communication has to be two-way. And often in hierarchies, the communication is a little bit one way and a little bit dictatorial and hierarchical. And so you're suggesting that we seek out to hear from everyone around us. And that's not just our employees, that's the people that are in our communities, the people that come in our buildings. We want to hear from them, and we want them to feel that what they feel is important and matters. And if they have a perception that something is not okay, that we take away all barriers and we make things better because it's how they feel. And so, a lot of what you're saying, I very much, it resonates with me, and I can go back over my 40 years and look at all the different examples. But I definitely agree with you. I think it's an issue of having a culture where it's very obvious that you care, from the top, from the sides, from the bottom up.
Well, Marty, not to make you blush, but I know many people that have worked for you that have felt blessed. And I know that when we've met, you were curious about me and you wanted to have those conversations with me, which made me feel motivated to work with you, even though I wasn't on staff. So I appreciate you raising that up. And again, a lot of this we might be doing already. Some of this maybe we might not. We want to start trying. But it's both specific tools and a larger philosophy. And I think you hit upon a lot of that, Marty. Thank you. I'd love to hear more. I know it's hard on a Zoom, but I know there's other thoughts in the room.
I have a Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're talking about the culture, about, you can do it from the top down, but is there a way to bring it from the bottom up? If that makes any sense?
Yes. I think everybody has a position of leadership here. I think it can even start with whether let's say some people report to you, right? You can have the conversations with the people that report to you, right? You are running something within a larger organism, right? You're running a certain area. And even if someone is not reporting to you and it's not that type of relationship, are there other people in your JCCs to say, hey, other staff members like, hey, I want to learn more about you and your journey. I was actually having a conversation with someone earlier who was, wanted to work, better or different with someone in another department. And I would say, how do you create a transformational relationship, not just a transactional one? That when we're talking to somebody, it's not just, can you help me with this? I need this by, but tell me about why you work here and what inspires you and motivates you. It might be hard to have these conversations initially. It might not be everyone's bailiwick or strength, but I tell you, they go a long way. And as we said earlier, if we have those conversations, we'll be naturally motivated to want to help the people that we develop relationships with. So hopefully that addresses it a little bit, Valerie. I think we have time for one more comment, maybe. And if we do, would love to hear from you. Otherwise, I will turn it back to Steve.
Well, thank you. I'm just, because we keep getting other comments coming into the chat, I want to make sure that everybody has the link. If you want to purchase a copy of Mark's first book, Bless Our Workforce, Changing the Way We Manage Our People, please visit that link at amazon.com. And Mark, thank you so much. I know, and you're seeing it in the chat right now, we've all come away from this session so inspired and motivated by your presentation. So Mark, thank you. We really appreciate everything that you do
Thank you, Steve.
for the field. And folks, in terms of the rest of the day, our colleagues are our best teachers. So from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, please join us for 30-minute sessions where your colleagues will share in the JCC Excellence Showcase, JCC initiatives and programming, staff recruiting and retention, visionary management, marketing and media, all offering a great opportunity to learn about initiatives that can be replicated in your JCC community. And you can find out more information and links to the sessions on SpotMe. Be sure to log on for 15 minutes to set your intentions for the day. Tomorrow, our last ProCon day. Prepare your whole staff for a full day at ProCon. After a brief welcome, you can choose from one of several mindfulness opportunities, breakouts, including meditation, movement, or goal setting, and then spend 10 minutes just doing that. These sessions are sponsored by and will be led by instructors from Les Mills. Once you're in the right frame of mind and body, you'll be all set for the second set of enrichment electives. Find all the topics on SpotMe. So again, 30-minute sessions at 4 o'clock, 30-minute sessions at 4:30. And everybody, we'll see you again at another ProCon session. Thank you, Mark Young.
Thank you, everyone. You are all amazing. Enjoy ProCon. JCCs, awesome. Woohoo!